Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Living Inspired with Autism. I'm Antoinette. I'm a life coach who helps parents of autistic children really make the best of their lives. Today's episode is one that I've been sitting with for a while because it's a concept I teach often and I talk about it often. And yet, when it comes time to really apply it, some people just get stuck. And it follows on beautifully on what I've spoken about in my last couple of podcasts. Today, we're going to talk about who you are becoming. Not who you've been, not who you think you are right now, but who you are in the process of becoming. And this matters more than almost anything else that I teach. Because most of us have been taught very subtly and very consistently to build our lives based on our past. We look at our past to decide who we are. We look at our past to decide what we're capable of. We look to our past to decide what's realistic for us. And the past simply cannot answer those questions. So when I ask someone, what are you capable of? Most people immediately look backwards. They look at what they've done before and what they've tried before, and what worked and what didn't. And that seems logical, right? Except it's completely flawed because what you're capable of has nothing to do with what you've already done. What you're capable of is your capacity to grow, and that hasn't been tested yet. The future version of you has never existed before. So, of course, your past can't provide evidence for it. And yet, this is where many of you get stuck. You tell me, well, I've never done that before, or I don't know how, or I've never been that kind of person. And I always want to say, can you imagine if we applied that logic to learning how to walk? Can you imagine a toddler saying, well, I can't walk. I've never done it before. Of course they've never done it before. That's the point. They practice, they wobble, they fall, they get back up. And that is how capacity is built. But as adults, we suddenly treat never having done something before as a reason not to do it. And we say it like it makes sense. Now, one of the most limiting questions you can ask yourself is, who am I? Because most people interpret that question as if the answer is already fixed, as if who you are is static, as if it was decided long ago, as if it was pre-installed. Instead, I want you to start asking a much more powerful question. Who am I becoming? That question immediately points you forward. It opens space, it invites growth, it assumes change. And it gently just removes your past from the driver's seat. Now, how we define ourselves every day, you can see this playing out in everyday conversations. Ask someone, how are you? Now, if they're excited about something that's coming up, they'll say, I'm great, I'm going on holiday. Or, I'm amazing, I'm graduating soon. I'm so excited, something big is happening. Their emotional state is being defined by their future. But if you ask someone else the same question, they'll say, I'm exhausted. Yesterday was so hard. My childhood was rough. These last few months have just been a lot. Now notice something. Nothing has changed in the present moment. What changed is where they're looking. Most people are unconsciously using their past and their circumstances to define how they are right now. And what we want to do is flip that. When we take this idea of defining yourself from the future, we can take this idea deeper and it becomes even more powerful. You can define who you are based on who you are becoming. This is especially important if your past is not something that you want to recreate. And I see this clearly when working with people who struggle with habits that they want to change. When someone defines themselves by their history, they recreate it. And then they say things like, I'm just like this. I've always struggled with this. This is who I am. But when we help them imagine who they are becoming, everything shifts. Because your imagination is one of your greatest tools as a human being. And your future can be whatever you want it to be. You do not need permission. You do not need justification. You do not need a committee meeting. You get to decide. Now, for many parents, especially parents carrying extra responsibility, the past can feel heavy. Years of managing, years of adapting, years of being the strong one. And if that past has been challenging, it becomes even more important that you don't use it as your identity. If you want a future that feels calmer and more expansive and more intentional, you must define yourself from there, not from here. You don't wait to arrive to become that person. You just become that person. Remember this. Your imagination is simply a collection of thoughts, and your thoughts create your feelings. So when you imagine a future that feels spacious and meaningful and exciting, you generate those emotions now. And when you replay regret, disappointment, or limitations from the past, you generate those emotions now too. You're always living from a thought. The question is, which one? And something I just want to normalize. When I ask people what they want their future to be like, most people don't know. They've never allowed themselves to think about it. They believe their future is determined by their past capability, their current circumstances, or what feels realistic. And that belief robs them of agency. Your future is created in your mind first, which means it is optional. You can default to your past, or you can decide differently. And the moment you decide differently, you begin changing the now. When you say, I am becoming someone who is calmer, I am becoming someone who trusts herself, I am becoming someone who leads his life intentionally, something shifts. You start thinking differently, you start responding differently, you start showing up differently. You don't wait until the future arrives. You rehearse it now. And an important part of this work is when you decide who you are becoming, you will feel discomfort because you're holding two mental constructs at the same time, who you've been and who you're becoming. That tension is not the problem. It's a signal of growth. Your job is to keep programming your brain with your future version instead of letting the past run the show. One of my favorite ways to explain this is through acting. Imagine you are an actor preparing for a role. You don't just wait until the filming starts to be the character. You study them, you become the script, you memorize the lines, you practice the posture, the tone, the choices. And the best actors don't just recite lines, they become the character. This is method acting. And that's exactly how becoming works. If you know who you're becoming, you must write the script. What does she think? What does he feel? How does she respond to stress? How does he make decisions? Then you practice. Not trying to become him or her, but being him or her. Now, people sometimes say to me, but isn't that inauthentic? And I always laugh because what is authenticity? isn't replaying your past, the patterns forever. Just because something feels natural doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's familiar. Authenticity is living in alignment with who you want to be. That is the truest version of you. The huge distinction between being versus trying. You don't act in order to become. You act as the person you are becoming. And here's a simple example. People who don't desire alcohol don't think about alcohol. They don't negotiate with it. They don't play around it. They don't resist it. They just don't identify it. So becoming that person means thinking the thoughts of someone who simply doesn't care. And now this applies to everything. It applies to money, boundaries, confidence, calm. You stop managing the problem and start embodying the identity. Remember, you don't come preloaded with who you are. You get programmed. You get programmed by family, by society, by experiences. And now, as an adult, you get to program yourself. You are not at the mercy of your brain. You are in charge of it. And most people never use this power. It's like being handed a brand new iPhone and never turning it on. The technology is there, but it requires practice. Everything ahead of you is a blank slate. You don't have to carry your past forward. Not your habits, not your identity, not your limitations. You can imagine a completely different life where you live, how you work, who you are, and the moment you imagine it, it exists as a possibility. Now that is powerful. You don't need to justify what you want. You don't need to explain it. You can want what you want simply because you want it. That alone is enough. Who are you becoming? That is the question. Whatever you answer becomes a possibility. And once it exists as a possibility, it can be rehearsed. And once rehearsed, it can be lived. All change happens in the mind first. When you live from your future, everything changes. Your decisions, your reactions, your boundaries, your future becomes the anchor. And if you don't choose a future, your past is going to fill that space. And that's where stagnation lives. Growth lives in tension. Before we close, I just want to offer you something. If you're listening to this and realizing that you have been living very defined by your past, if you feel like you've lost touch with who you want to become, or if you know there's a version of you that feels calmer, stronger, powerful, more intentional, but you don't quite know how to step into them yet, this is exactly the work that I do with my clients. So in a private consult, we just slow things right down. We look at how you're currently identifying with yourself, and then we begin creating a future-focused identity that actually feels supportive and grounded and aligned with your real life. This is not about fixing yourself. It's about clarity, choice, and becoming who you already know you are meant to be. So if this resonates, I want to invite you to book a complimentary consult with me. There's no obligation. It's just a conversation. And you'll find the details in the show notes. And I would love to be a part of that and to chat to you. So my friends, who are you becoming? Decide deliberately and let the future guide you, starting today. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.